Hello, University of London superstars, and a very warm welcome to your studies with us. My name is Dr. James Abdey. I'm the Associate Academic Director of the International Programmes, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you to your studies with us. So the purpose of this presentation is to give you a little bit of background to our programmes, the history of them, but to focus very much on the expectations that we will have of you in fulfilment of your studies. Now, we love acronyms in academia, and one of which you will hear much of in the months and years ahead is EMFSS, Economics, Management, Finance and the Social Sciences, a sort of collective term for the disciplines that we teach at the LSE and by extension through our international programme offerings. Now, my day job is as a lecturer in statistics at the LSE, and I'll speak a little bit more on the parity of the modules you'll be undertaking in your programs of study with those which run on campus at the LSE itself. So, in terms of our menu for today, to begin with introducing the LSE and the role it plays in terms of the academic direction for the programs. Indeed, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you will see two logos, UOL, University of London, as the degree awarding body, and the LSE, which provides academic direction. And also look at the expectations we have of you in terms of your studies, and in particular, the sorts of key skills that you will be developing over the coming years, which will be appropriate not just for completion of your examinations, but also to stand you in very good stead for the world of work which follows. And indeed, talking about examinations, for the most part, our modules are assessed summatively. So summative assessments means assessments which counts towards your final degree classification. And the vast majority of modules are assessed through examinations. Admittedly, we are at a very early stage in the academic year, but no harm in me giving you a few bits of tips and advice in preparation for those examinations. So first of all, the University of London and the LSE, what is the relationship? Now, many new students with us are not always 100% familiar with the University of London and its structure. So formally, UOL, University of London, is a federation of independent member institutions, of which there are 17, LSE being one of them. Now, I'm sure you will recognize many of those names, the branding of these member institutions as leading names in higher education, not just in the United Kingdom, but on a global level. Now, the LSE highlighted there, my alma mater. We focus purely in the social sciences, and hence the EMFSS. So what are the social sciences? Well, loosely, we're looking at the study of people and the behavior of people, looking at the decisions that they make, focusing on the economics and political science in LSE's full name, clearly an emphasis on economic and political decision-making of individuals. But we have departments beyond economics and government, such as law, mathematics, statistics, etc. So LSE is one of the constituent member institutions of UOL. Now, we are somewhat niche and specialist in the disciplines we cover. Contrast that to UCL, which offers a far greater choice of disciplines. Places like the Royal Veterinary College, so if you wanted to learn how to heal animals, then the RVC would be the place for you, not the LSE. If you had a sort of musical streak in you, then you would be heading for the Royal Academy of Music. So all of those famous names on the right-hand side there, we are all part of the University of London. So just drilling down in a little bit more detail, UOL itself, founded back in 1836 by Royal Charter. In the UK, only Oxford and Cambridge universities are older than UOL. Now, UOL was the first university to award degrees regardless of race, creed, gender, or political belief. Now, of course, in the 21st century, that may sound somewhat old-fashioned, but by being the first such university to award degrees on, regardless of those particular attributes, that clearly was world leading. And in sort of part because of that, the knocking down of barriers and really wanting to maximize access to high quality higher education. This has been a central purpose of the University of London since its foundation. Such that University of London is the world's oldest distance learning provider. And University of London worldwide, and its sort of a current branding, was established back in 1858. Now, perhaps one should be a little bit cautious with the term distance learning. Often it conjures up a perception of studies by correspondence, whereby you receive your learning materials through your letterbox. Clearly, by being enrolled at a local teaching centre, this is very much not study by correspondence, but nonetheless, that distance learning moniker is sort of quite widely used. So UOL founded back in 1836, LSE founded in 1895. So UOL predates the LSE. Now, in terms of the reputation of the LSE, we are ranked number 2 globally for the social sciences. Wow, number 2, that's pretty impressive. Well, let's be honest, no one ever wants to be number 2 at something. We always want to be number 1 of something. And in case you're wondering, I believe it's Harvard which has that number 1 spot for the social sciences. However, I am a statistician by trade, and I always look at ranking methodologies with a healthy degree of skepticism. Namely, if you were to tweak or adjust the ranking methodology slightly, you could almost engineer the specific ranking that you want. If you just give slightly different weights, slightly different levels of importance to different factors. Nonetheless, though, I think if an institution is in the top 10 or certainly top 5 on a ranking league table, that is a very strong indicator of quality. Teaching centres, I mentioned a bit more on that later on. We have over 36, in fact, accredited teaching centres globally. Now, why does LSE rank so highly for the social sciences? In part, but by no means exclusively, due to its world-leading research. And in a few minutes' time, we'll look a little bit at the reason of being of the LSE and why it was founded originally, and very much a research focus, such that LSE prides itself on being a research-led teaching institution. Of course, our world-leading research is sort of confined to the social sciences. We're not going to see seminal papers in sort of chemistry, physics, etc. But we do have our world-leading research, Nobel Prize winners in terms of either faculty or former students of the LSE, 36 to date. And in case you're wondering, no, I am not among them, but I like to think I'm still fairly young and time is on my side, and who knows, one day I can sort of add to that number. So given the size of the institution, I think 36 Nobel laureates and hopefully counting is a very impressive achievement. In terms of UOL alumni, so those who've completed studies can be found in over 180 countries, such that as and when you complete your studies with us, and whether you stay local or whether you have an international career, very likely you will never be too far away from a fellow alumnus or alumna. In terms of the number of degrees awarded annually by the University of London, remember at the bottom of the screen, University of London, the degree awarding body, around about 50,000, which is, I'd say, on the large size with regards to universities. So, in terms of the LSE and the University of London, 2 very important institutions with regards to your studies, but there is a third. And the third one in this third pillar is the teaching centre. So let's just consider briefly the roles that the LSE, or Teaching Centre, and the University of London play. And we'll begin with the LSE. So as a member institution of UOL, LSE is responsible for the academic direction of your programme of study, of your EMFSS programme, such that everything you'll be learning in the months and years ahead in your degree is created, designed by LSE academics. In particular for myself, I've written many of the statistics courses, and we have a team of about 50 LSE academics who collaborate with the EMFSS programs. So the LSE academics design the curriculum and they set and conduct the assessments. Just a further word on the designing the curriculum. It's not just the fact that LSE academics create your learning materials. When we do so, we do our best to ensure parity with equivalent modules which run on campus internally at the LSE. So again, I'll take statistics as an example. Many of you will be taking either Statistics 1 or Statistics 2 in your first year. So I've written the subject guide for those courses, and I also lecture the equivalent internal modules on campus at the LSE. And I can attest firsthand that there is parity of content in terms of what you'll be studying at your teaching centre for Stats 1 and Stats 2, as students at LSE will be studying. So we place great emphasis on this notion of parity, and that's a key part of the role of the LSE in terms of its academic direction. You can see the research listed there. So as a research-led teaching institution, the latest knowledge and understanding of the real world around us feeds into our teaching on our on-campus courses, and of course by extension through the learning resources for EMFSS. Examinations, oh, everyone loves exams. So all of the examinations, the question papers, the individual questions will have been written and set by LSE academics. Again, with the notion of parity of the sorts of exam questions we would examine students present on the LSE campus. And these are not easy examinations, and we place great emphasis on the rigor of the exams themselves. When the exams are sat locally, albeit 2020 has been a bit of an outlier year with the COVID-19 pandemic, but ordinarily examinations conducted by independent third parties, typically invigilated by the British Council or similar, to ensure complete integrity of the assessment process. Again, 2020, somewhat of an exception, but examinations typically offered once per year, a single exam sitting in May and or June. And the question papers, not only set by LSE academics, but then the exam scripts, your answers, your solutions to these exam questions will be marked by examiners appointed by the LSE, and subsequently with results and awards confirmed by the University of London in its capacity as the awarding body. So that's the LSE. Now, what about the teaching centre? So 36 teaching centres scattered around the world. They provide at the campus. And indeed, your undergraduate studies with us should be more than just the academics, albeit as Associate Academic Director with that hat on, the academics are extremely important, of course, but we recognise that a university experience goes far beyond the lecture hall and the seminar rooms. Full participation in the sort of extracurricular activities, the clubs, societies, very much character building activities, that forms part and parcel of your campus experience. The teaching. So everything you'll be taught will come from the local teaching centre. So the teaching centre effectively acts as the conduit for delivering the teaching. but what is being taught will be the course materials designed by the LSE academics due to the academic direction of the LSE. Your peers, please do make friends with your fellow students on your programs of study, not just from a social aspect, but also from a learning aspect. And I think there's great strength in terms of improving your understanding of individual module content by forming sort of peer study groups, having study buddies to discuss the content of the various courses. So that's the role of the teaching centre. And finally, last but by no means least, the University of London. So the degree awarding body. So upon successful completion of your programme of study with us, the degree certificate will be issued by UOL. It will be embossed with the UOL crest. There will be a mention of the London School of Economics and Political Science in terms of you having been assessed through the approved examinations written by the LSE. But keep in mind that you are working towards a UK issued degree, which has huge currency at a global level. So very much a high level of international recognition of these degrees. Indeed, being the first so-called distance learning provider, it takes a very long time to establish a reputation. Of course, you can destroy a reputation very quickly, but as University of London is the world's longest serving a distance learning provider, we have the longest time to have accrued that reputation. And for all the UK's faults, and I'm sure there are many, I'd like to think that the higher education sector is a real jewel in the crown, as it were, in terms of UK sectors. And really, it is one of our leading export sectors. Although ordinarily, when you think about exports, you're thinking about physical commodities being shipped around the world, and education is not necessarily tangible in that sense. But nonetheless, economists would consider UK higher education as an export industry. The global alumni community, so 50,000 degrees issued annually by University of London, alumni in over 180 countries, and hence clearly a very large and vibrant global alumni community that you will be members of upon completion of your studies. So where are you? So here's our map of the world, and all of those little dots there correspond to our teaching centres. So 36 in total in 20 countries, traversing 4 continents. There is a concentration of students in terms of absolute numbers in Asia, but you can see we also have presence in Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and South America. Now, in the pre-pandemic days, I would travel a lot, and I've not been to all of those teaching centres. I haven't made it yet to those in South America, but most, if not all of the rest, I have visited at some point. And ordinarily, this kind of presentation I would be delivering in person, on site at your local teaching centre. And it's always been a pleasure when I have been travelling to interact directly with our EMFSS student body. So you are very much part of a global community, not just in terms of the alumni community after completion, but right now we have just over 14,000 students currently studying EMFSS programs worldwide. Now, if you are linking that back to the 50,000 figure I mentioned earlier, the 50,000 is looking at University of London students covering all discipline areas, for example, law, computer science, etc. Focusing just on the EMFSS programs with the LSE academic direction, numbering just over 14,000. So your fellow students are, well, scattered all over the world. So when you make friends with people, clearly in person, face-to-face, or perhaps mask-to-mask at your local teaching centre, but through our virtual learning environments and the various discussion forums on there, you are able to connect and interact with your peers worldwide. So let's just think a little bit more about this figure of 14,000. We've considered it relative to the 50,000 global UOL figure, but how does it compare to the size of the LSE undergraduate cohort? Now, LSE, a great university, but we are right in the heart of central London. Real estate is very expensive, and LSE itself is a very small campus, such that we have a limit as to how many students we can accommodate on campus, even more so in the era of social distancing. So ordinarily, LSE would have about 4,000 undergraduate students. That's 4,000 students covering all years of the undergraduate degrees and all departments. So 4,000 internally, 14,000 EMFSS students. So it's really due to the lack of physical space that we can only accommodate 4,000 on site. I think with regards to the UK, at least, LSE is one of, if not the most competitive university in which to gain admission. And every year there are about, I would say, 12 or 13 applicants chasing every single undergraduate place. We'd love to take them all high achieving students. However, we just don't have the space to do so. And hence why we love the EMFSS programs, because it allows us to reach a far greater number of students to follow an LSE designed curriculum than we could ever hope to teach on campus in central London. Just another word on the teaching centres, 36. We at LSE opt for quality over quantity, such that all of those 36 teaching centres are approved by the LSE to deliver the EMFSS programs, because we want you as students to have the best possible educational experience, multifaceted, not just the teaching, but also the ancillary activities as well, so the clubs, societies, etc., such that we only approve teaching centres that we are confident can deliver a first-class educational experience to you. And 36, if you consider how big the world is, I think 36 teaching centres is somewhat on the low side, but that is testament to the emphasis we place on quality over quantity. And we in London are in regular contact with all of the teaching centres, and when international borders are open, that can entail actual visits of LSE personnel to teaching centres, to interact with students, run faculty training sessions, exchange best practices. Of course, in the era of COVID-19, most of that interaction by necessity is now done virtually. But fingers crossed that the borders reopen and international travel resumes in the not too distant future. So study locally, impact globally. So by listening to this now, you would hopefully have now started your program of study and signed up to one of our particular degree programs. So listed here are broadly the main discipline areas we offer. Admittedly, not every teaching centre offers the full portfolio of degree subject areas. Now, hopefully, you will thoroughly enjoy your degree experience, but we recognise that when you were applying for your programme of study, maybe you've applied for a discipline which you've not actually studied before. And until you actually sit through the lectures and seminars, you will have perhaps your prior perception or indeed prior expectation about what an actual subject involves, and maybe the reality of your first undergraduate year is a bit different from that prior expectation. So while the vast majority of students will stick with their original choice of degree program, some do switch degree program after the first year in light of these new information they've obtained from the modules they've studied in that first year. So we quite rightly would expect your academic interests to evolve over time. And this is why many, not all, but many of our undergraduate programs have a common or fairly common first year of courses, such that it's somewhat of a standardized first year. So, for example, Introduction to Economics, Maths 1, Statistics 1. Students on many different degree programs will be studying those same core courses in the first year. And that's by design, because let's suppose your interest did evolve during that first year and you were thinking about perhaps switching degree major. Then, with some exceptions, that could be facilitated after the end of your first year, because you would have covered a common curriculum. I say with some exceptions, in particular the more quantitative degree programs, so data science and business analytics, and mathematics and economics, they have higher requirements of quantitative courses in the first year. But there can be those sorts of transfer options across many of our degree programs. Also, it may be that you are committed to your choice of degree program, but you would like to broaden your horizons. Well, good news. Most, if not all, of our degree programs in the third and final year, possibly even in some cases in the second year, would allow some choice. And I would encourage you to have a look at your degree program structure and to look at which papers in second or more likely the third year allow for some choice, where you can choose from the so-called selection groups. So this gives you the opportunity either to pursue your degree major in greater depth by taking more specialist courses in that major discipline, or perhaps have some breadth to your degree by taking some so-called outside options in other disciplinary areas. Just one word of a caution at this stage is to appreciate that many second and third year courses will have what we call prerequisites. And you can research all of this online with the london.ac.uk website. But just to be advised that if, let's say, there was a third year course that particularly interests you, even though just in your first year now, but you were thinking that it would be something you would like to study in your final year, just to be aware of any prerequisites which that third year module, second year module has, and ensure that by the time you would wish to take that particular module, you would have studied and passed the examinations for any prerequisite modules. Because I think there's nothing worse than discovering as you go into your final year, I'd love to take this course, oops, I haven't taken a prerequisite course because I didn't think that far ahead. So we try to have maximum flexibility in our degree program structures, whether that's to transfer degree program or to experience some greater breadth of disciplines, particularly in your final year. Now, the LSE, photo time. So these are the founding fathers and mother of the LSE, Beatrice and Sydney Webb and George Bernard Shaw. I'll leave it as a take-home exercise for you to try and determine who is who in that photo. On the left-hand side, the coat of arms. So all great universities will have a coat of arms, and the real elite ones will have a motto, where that motto is in Latin. And LSE likes, I think, to consider itself an elite university. Number 2 in the world for the social sciences, ain't bad. And LSE has as its Latin motto, and pardon me for any poor Latin pronunciation, rerum cognoscere causas. English translation, to understand the causes of things. Now, as an academic, I think this is a beautiful motto, because what is education, what is learning all about? It's about discovering things about the world, be it things about economics, finance, politics, data science, business analytics, you name it. But it's all about expanding our understanding of the real world around us. And this is really at the heart of what LSE was meant to do upon its founding back in 1895. So founded in 1895, 2020, 125th birthday, yay. Admittedly, in the era of COVID-19, those birthday celebrations likely to be somewhat muted. Any birthday parties, no doubt, heavily socially distanced. But nonetheless, a very happy 125th birthday to the LSE. Clearly, it takes a little bit of time to launch or found a new university. So Beatrice Webb, our founding mother, diary entry from 1894. So clearly it took some months or a year to actually found the university. Highlighted here some keywords: research, original work, elucidating, reforming society. So the vision of Sydney Beatrice Webb and George Bernard Shaw was to found a London School of Economics and Political Science. Well, clearly there's only one London School of Economics and Political Science, so arguably it should be the London School of Economics and Political Science. But with that mission statement, that motto of rerum cognoscere causas, to understand the causes of things, clearly research would be at the heart of that. And I'd like to think in 2020, our understanding of the real world around us, okay, the social science real world around us, is far more advanced than it was back in 1895. However, our understanding of the real world is by no means complete. Examples: in 2016, we had a couple of unexpected geopolitical events, the Brexit referendum and the US presidential election a few months after that. And frankly, most commentators did not see the outcomes of votes to leave the UK to leave the European Union and Donald Trump to beat Hillary Clinton in the presidential election. So this was, I think, a surprise for most people. And so our understanding of the world is not yet complete. But as we undertake more and more research, our understanding improves over time. And all of this feeds into the teaching on campus at LSE and into the EMFSS programs. So there's a clear connection of the initial aspirations of the LSE founders to the EMFSS degrees, namely the importance of teaching independent, critical thinking skills for the betterment of society, such that as and when you complete your programs of study, you graduate and go off into the real world, we hope very much that you will make a positive contribution to society and by extension, humanity. So what are some of the expectations of a University of London degree, and what sorts of attributes will you be developing during your time of study with us? So perhaps we'll kick off with the first one there on the top left: encouraging critical and creative thinking. Now, clearly that you've got to the stage of higher education, clearly you are not new to education. You all would have had so many years of school and college level education prior to now. So you're not new to study. However, you are going to be new to a university style or university approach to study, which is very different from what you would have been accustomed to in your local schools and colleges. Namely, it's all about trying to understand, and this links very closely to the rerum cognoscere causas, to understand the causes of things, because we want you not just to be able to be on autopilot and regurgitate an answer to a question, but to really understand the material. And this will feature quite heavily in terms of the final examinations and the kinds of skills that examiners want you to demonstrate. Improving self-motivation and ability to work independently. Now, I've been a student myself X years ago. I'll let you form your own estimate of what the value of X may be. And I know it can sometimes be a bit of a struggle. You can have the mid-year blues when studying, and it does require not just self-motivation, but also self-discipline, namely to cover the volume of material and understand the volume of material. We will expect you to do so. Juggling many commitments, your personal commitments, clubs, societies, etc., and to stay sufficiently motivated as you prepare for those examinations. But nonetheless, this resilience is a key skill, not just in fulfillment of the degree, but which employers would value a great deal, as well as working independently. I should stress, though, I would hope your study is not exclusively done independently. I do want you interacting with your peers face-to-face or mask-to-mask, at your teaching centre or virtually through the various VLE discussion forums with your peers globally. Of course, your assessments themselves will be done independently, but in terms of the study itself, please do collaborate with your peers as much as possible. Creating job opportunities around the world, enhancing analytical and problem-solving skills. Goodness me. If you look at the World Economic Forum, they regularly issue these top 10 skills which employers are demanding in the workplace, both now and expected in the future. And among them are things such as problem-solving skills, indeed complex problem-solving skills. That was number 1, I think, on the last time I looked at the list. Also sort of judgment and decision-making, ability to work independently. Now, whether you're pursuing a qualitative or quantitative degree with us, of course, the kinds of problems you'll be solving will be different, but our programs really will help you refine and hone those skills for the benefit of your examinations, but also for the jobs awaiting you in the future. Access. So remember, the University of London, the first university to award its degrees regardless of race, creed, gender and political belief. Well, we are very much concerned about your maximum participation, maximum access. And so through our EMFSS degrees, we sort of knock down those geographical, also financial barriers about pursuing an LSE designed curriculum without having to physically be in the UK. Frankly, if you were in London for your undergraduate studies as an international student, certainly outside the EU, and depending how the Brexit negotiations go, possibly those in the EU, the cost, the living expenses of London are extortionate, and so too would be adding to that the tuition fees. So the EMFSS degrees offer you to pursue an LSE curriculum at a far lower cost. And clearly, money matters, and these sorts of the financial consequences of decisions, costs involved are very important variables. But let's suppose you did aspire to study in the UK, and we would welcome you to do so. So keep in mind that a possible pathway is to progress to postgraduate study in the UK. So as your University of London degree is a UK issued degree, we have an excellent track record of top performing students in the UOL exams going on to pursue their master's degree, not just at LSE, but at other top universities in the UK and indeed worldwide. And while there are no certainties, these postgraduate programs are always competitive entry. If, for example, you apply to the LSE for a master's degree, having pursued an EMFSS qualification where the selectors know the content is modelled on equivalent internal courses at the LSE, I think it's fair to say, while there are no certainties, your application would have, shall we say, a competitive edge. Improving your written English. For some of you, English will be your first language. For others, a second, third, or perhaps even fourth language. Very impressive that would be too. Of course, the more qualitative disciplines will require far more in the way of written English in terms of essays in exams, but nonetheless, improvement of your English as this is an English taught program. And combining a firm grounding in subject knowledge with real-world examples. And for myself, when I lecture, admittedly, some of the statistical theory can seem quite abstract to students at first sight, but I always try to bring in real-world examples to showcase how this content is directly applicable to the real world. So what is a successful student? The happy faces you see on the screen there, these are not library stock images. These are genuine EMFSS students who have, some of whom have come to the LSE, for example, for either for summer school or postgraduate study. So these are from various teaching centres around the world. Indeed, I just mentioned summer school. 2020, again, an outlier year with the pandemic, and sadly we had to cancel the summer school, but fingers crossed, 2021, we get back to some semblance of normality. So potential for you to experience LSE, London, and if you travel around the country a bit as well, the UK more widely, by all means consider applying for an LSE summer school course. And as an EMFSS student, you'll be eligible for a discount on the tuition fees. And several EMFSS students have opted to experience LSE summer school and have had a great time. So how to achieve success? I'm not going to give you an actual mathematical formula, but some general guiding principles about how to be successful. And indeed, we all want you to achieve your full potential and achieve success in the examinations. So attending lectures. So every module will have a subject guide. In some courses, particularly the more quantitative ones, the subject guide is somewhat self-contained in that it contains all knowledge you need to do well in the examinations. In other modules, the subject guide is exactly that, a guide to external readings, be it from textbooks or journal articles, accessible many of them through the VLE and the UOL online library, such that before attending lectures, you will typically have access to the subject matter to be covered in those lectures. And so I think a great piece of advice is to read the material before the lecture. When I say read, it's fine to skim read. You don't need to understand every single feature of the material, but you look at or highlight sort of the key terms and concepts such that when your local lecturer mentions them, they are at least somewhat familiar to you. Take notes during those lectures. Now, note-taking is a sort of an art as much as it really is a science, and it is a key skill, but a great skill to develop not just for your studies, but the world of work which follows. I'm sure you will have many meetings to look forward to in your respective careers, which a bit like a lecture, during which information is disseminated, and you would need to determine which are the most important things mentioned in those meetings and be able to take notes of them. Handouts, be they visible in paper form or perhaps on a tablet, and be able to annotate them. Listen to your lecturer and be prepared to participate in discussions. Okay, the discussion element in lectures will be dependent on the size of that lecture group and how feasible it is to have those discussions, and perhaps to some extent on the subject matter itself and the discipline. Ensure you understand the material. There's that word understand again. Remember, rerum cognoscere causas, to understand the causes of things. So, and that takes time and it takes effort. And inevitably, some people will understand a particular topic faster or slower than others, but please do persevere. Remember that resilience and the need for that self-motivation. So in every module, your subject guide is a core resource, but potentially, and it will vary from module to module, there will be a necessity to read other textbooks or journal articles. So make sure you are have your VLE login access, so VLE virtual learning environment, basically our online portal where you can access the various resources. Practicing exercises in the quantitative subjects, in practicing problems. Either those exercises or activities in the subject guide or in any suggested textbooks. Any assignments that your local lecturers may set. Treat these as excellent opportunities to prepare for your summative examinations. Ask questions. If something is not clear to you, ask either your local lecturer, among your peer study groups, or through the various discussion forums on the VLE. Many subjects are cumulative in nature, such that material you learn early on in perhaps chapter 1 of a course is needed and drawn upon in later chapters, such that if you don't get a full understanding of early topics, you are potentially just compounding problems or a lack of understanding later on in the course. test your knowledge, test yourself, test your peers in those peer study groups. Now, I'm fully aware that many students are preoccupied with exams and the grades in those exams. However, at the early part of the academic year, please, your focus should not be on those examinations, but your focus should be on understanding the subject material. And if you focus on that, the exams will sort of look after themselves, because the examinations will typically be assessing your understanding of the subject matter. So the more time you invest in understanding the material, that really will, in the long run, give you some economies of scale in the preparation for those exams. Some key skills, 4 of them, for studying with success: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So reading, relating to the key course texts, subject guide, any external readings and assignments. Listening during lectures, speaking, sharing ideas with others, be they your local lecturers or indeed your peer group, and writing, whether that's essays or the actual exams themselves. So just to deep dive a little into each of those, consider the readings. Now, it's true, I would say that readings can be difficult and challenging. Potentially, the readings are very long, and you need to be discerning, and sometimes some of the readings may seem unconnected and difficult to remember. So a key thing is to make notes on more than just content, but to actively look for connections. Now, that may be connections within a module, so from one chapter to another, but also look for connections across subjects as well. As an example, Introduction to Economics and Mathematics 1. Mathematics 1 has several examples with economic applications. So, for example, supply and demand functions for a firm, or looking at the profit maximization of a firm. Now, in Mathematics 1, you're looking at that problem primarily from a mathematical perspective, because a Maths 1 course would be assessing your ability to perform differential calculus. Yet you'll be seeing those same sorts of problems, but more through an economics lens in the microeconomics part of your Introduction to Economics course. So there are many connections, particularly interdisciplinary connections, and to be on the lookout for those. Now, in terms of reading, remember, it's not the volume of information that's important. What matters is to identify the key points being made. Now, perhaps clearly more reading in the more qualitative disciplines. So for those, look very much for the debates, the key arguments for the different sides of those debates. But also reading in the quantitative disciplines, that of the subject guide and potentially textbooks as well. Methodologies, how you solve a particular problem. There can be sometimes more than one way, more than one methodology, more than one approach for solving a problem. And so you'll need to read and practice those different approaches, and to consider their relative merits and potential limitations. Of course, in matters of debate in the more qualitative disciplines and the different sides of the argument. Note just a bit on those essays for the qualitative subjects in the final examinations. Your opinion, you are entitled to your own opinion. It doesn't have to coincide with the opinion of the examiner. And so it is important to be able to present well, and this all links to the writing, I would say, to justify your particular point of view, but also acknowledge the alternative point of view, or points of view. And so your readings, in particular, of external resources, being able to cite evidence to back up your particular point of view in an essay, and think carefully about how one references external sources in answers. So listening. So listening primarily, of course, in lectures and seminars, tutorial groups, and okay, there can be a bit of a qualitative versus quantitative divide here. But nonetheless, your local lecturer will be the expert in the room, the expert in the field. And listening to an expert, I would say, can help you or guide you through unfamiliar territory, unfamiliar terrain, and guide you through that terrain. Now, if you've put in the effort of reading or skim reading the subject matter of a lecture in advance, that will make the navigation of the content in the lecture easier. Listening should never be passive. It should be active. That means you're annotating your lecture notes, jotting down what those key points are. And when appropriate and when feasible to do so, interrogate and challenge what you've heard, either in the lecture itself or post the lecture, let's say with your peers in your peer study groups. Again, look out for those connections, those links, be it within the module or across other modules. Lectures indeed can be intense, but they still tend to be the primary means for information dissemination. And so if lectures happen to be recorded where you are, you listen again, indeed, or focus on any particular parts of the lecture which you struggled to comprehend first time round. Post the lecture, you do the post-lecture review, talking through what you've heard with your local lecturers, with your peer study groups. The speaking with your classmates, and also these are, I think, useful skills to develop for the world of work which follows, being able to communicate with others. Now, when I say speaking, it may be face-to-face or mask-to-mask, or of course it may be virtually through, for example, the VLE discussion forums. We'll think of that as a sort of form of speaking. For the more qualitative disciplines, be able to develop your own arguments. And indeed, we value independence of thought and independence of opinion. Typically, there's no single right answer to an essay question. And two different students can have completely opposite perspectives, but provided they justify their stance and they can defend it with appropriate evidence through their external readings, then they could get equally high marks, even though they're advocating very different positions. Practice and prove your ability to analyze content from the lectures and the readings. Practice very much makes perfect. And develop your ability to question and develop ideas. Now, of course, this does come with time and with practice, but we are at the early stage of the academic year and several months to go before your assessments. Writing, find your voice, show, think about how you can communicate your views and opinions in the more qualitative disciplines to both your lecturer and the examiner. Just to think about the examiner for a moment. You will be communicating with the examiner. However, it's one-way communication. The only way you're going to be communicating with the examiner is through your written answers to the exam paper. And whether it's a qualitative or quantitative subject, it's the ink on the page, be it an essay, be it a load of methodological steps, in some quantitative problem. It's how you express yourself through the ink on the page. That is the only way you are able to sort of interact and communicate with the examiner. It's a slight difference between submitting work to your local lecturer who will know you as a person, but the examiner, the examinations process is entirely anonymous, and so the examiners, when they mark your scripts, will have no idea who you are. It's just some anonymous candidate number. And so being able to express yourself with clarity and with purpose, both qualitative and quantitative disciplines, is an extremely important skill, and one which you should be practicing a lot in the months ahead. Dealing with complex ideas. In terms of complexity, I mean, let's say a standard 3-year degree program, you have your 100 level, 200 and 300 level courses pitched for first, second and third year of undergraduate study. And quite rightly, as I'm sure you would expect, the level of complexity, the level of difficulty will increase as you pass from 100 through to 200 and ultimately 300 level courses. Perhaps some of the ideas here or perhaps better or more applicable to the qualitative disciplines. But think about setting out your ideas in chunks, which will be easily understood and digested by the examiner. Now, we said there were, what, 14,000, just over 14,000 EMFSS students globally. Admittedly, each studying a different combination of modules and or groups studying different combinations of modules each year. But nonetheless, the examiners will have a large number of scripts to mark, and so you need to make the marking by the examiners as sort of easy as possible by making the presentation of your material, particularly in the essay subjects, easy to digest by the examiner. So have plenty of practice with essay writing in the months ahead. If you have ideas, be able to connect those ideas and bridge them and think about how to best structure your answer to move from one idea onto another. Just a brief bit more specifically on the quantitative studies, because I appreciate quite a bit of the section just now on sort of reading, writing, listening, speaking skills. A lot of it is very much relevant more for the qualitative disciplines. On the quantitative side, so things like mathematics, statistics, economics, accounting, finance subjects. Quantitative studies, the importance of showing your method. Always show your method. Never simply write down your answer, but explain the method by which it is obtained. And this is why writing is very much important, even in the most quantitative of subjects, because to explain a method typically requires words. Okay, we're not looking at essay length explanations, but a few, a short phrase, a short sentence to explain to the examiner, to basically navigate them through your answer about explaining how you're going from one line to another. The importance of performing a reality check of your answer. Does the answer make sense? If it's a numerical answer, is it of the correct order of magnitude? Does the sign of the answer make sense? If you get a negative probability in a statistics problem, well, you've definitely made a mistake because probabilities are never negative. So these reality checks, these simple sense checks, I think are extremely important in any quantitative field. Not just in terms of your degree, but if you have a more quantitative career, whenever you're working with data, working with figures, these sense checks, is the decimal point in the right or wrong place? If the answer is nonsensical, then very likely the answer is wrong. Indeed, if the answer is impossible, it's definitely wrong. When an answer does make sense, if you do a reality check and say, yes, it seems a sensible answer, this doesn't prove your answer is right, but at least you will have something which is indeed sensible. And a good habit to get into is briefly explaining, whether it's to your local lecturer or in particular in the exam to the examiner, why your answer does or perhaps does not make sense. And practice, practice, practice. Several of the quantitative courses are more methods-based, and such that the methods don't change, but maybe the numerical values, the functions, the distributions you're working with, they could vary, but the methods don't. And the more you practice these methods, the more accomplished you become at them. So what does the examiner want? So I appreciate the exams are a few months down the road, but no harm in starting to think a little bit about exam technique. Now, some of this may sound obvious and, dare I say, common sense, but every single year, some candidates don't pay attention to all of these points. Have you attempted the required number of questions? Have a look through past examination papers on the VLE, look at the rubrics of them. Usually rubrics don't change from year to year, but keep an eye out on the VLE in case your specific module will be examined in a slightly different way. when you sit the assessments. So if there are any changes to rubrics, they will be clearly communicated on the VLE. So attempt the required number of questions. Some exams tend to be compulsory questions. The benefit of that is you don't need to waste time in an exam thinking about which questions to choose. Some exam papers will have some choice of questions. Now you might think, well, I like the luxury of choice, I then avoid the questions I dislike. But you do need to spend a few minutes reading through those questions when there is choice to decide which ones you want to do and which ones to ignore. Answer the question asked. Again, it may sound obvious, but you will be surprised, or well, I personally am not surprised, when every single year some students do not, they provide an answer, but it's not to the actual question which has been asked. And I've seen this even at a sort of a master's level, and you would think master's students by that stage should know better. So please don't read a question too quickly, don't misread it, and you end up not answering the question set. Take an appropriate approach. Admittedly here, this will be quite a big difference between qualitative and quantitative. Express yourself clearly. So even in those quantitative papers, making sure you are explaining the steps in your working. Write legibly, so the examiner can give you the marks. Now we've seen that you are geographically very dispersed, and handwriting styles I know vary a great deal around the world. In some countries, the typical font is very sort of cursive. In other countries, the fonts can be sort of very precise. Examiners are or have a lot of experience with reading different handwriting styles. So don't worry if your script is particularly cursive or quite small, but please make sure your writing is legible. That doesn't mean legible to you, but legible to the examiner. Just sort of towards a closing now, some general words of advice in terms of approaching exams. I think here we do need to distinguish between the qualitative papers and the quantitative ones. So beginning at the qualitative level, answer the question in clear terms, structure your paper, so might be individual essays into sections. Make sure you provide an opening introduction. State your views in answering the question. Now, you're not going to be marked down for what your views are. We expect different students to have different opinions on a variety of topic areas, but make sure your views are clear to the examiner. Make sure you leave enough time for a closing statement. So keep an eye on the clock. Don't run out of time such that you it's pens down while you are still mid-sentence and you haven't been able to provide a clear closing statement. So set out your clear introduction, specifying how you're going to answer the question and how your answer indeed addresses the question. So really the introduction should be a bit of a roadmap to the essay which follows, such that the examiner will know what to expect as they read through your essay. Make sure your conclusion is distinct. Try and, not trying to regurgitate a previous essay you might have written. Try and show some originality in terms of the phrasings you use. Try and convince the examiner around to your point of view, and make sure you back up any positions you take through your essay with appropriate evidence. So look at any advice in the examiner's commentaries for these modules about any referencing conventions which the examiners might be expecting. Remember to allocate your time accordingly. Exam technique. This is not subject specific, but it's general exam technique. It's always easier to get some marks on all of the questions than all of the marks from some of the questions. And for those doing Introduction to Economics, you'll learn about diminishing marginal returns. Applied here, we're looking at the diminishing marginal number of marks you can get with respect to the time you spend on that question. So look at mark allocations of questions within an exam, and please do divide your time accordingly and proportionately. On the quantitative front, as I said before, always show your method. Sometimes there can be more than one way of approaching a problem. If a question is method specific and you use a different method to solve the problem, then you would forfeit the method marks. If a question is not method specific, then you would be free to use any viable method in answering that problem. Of course, some methods may be easier for you to apply, some may be quicker for you to apply. And hopefully the easier methods are the quicker ones for you to apply. Never just write down the answer, explain the method used. That means use some words, not extended essays, but a short sentence to explain the approach you adopted. Include your rough working. If there's something you don't want the examiner to see, simply cross out that rough working and they will mentally ignore it. Good news, partial credit can and indeed typically is awarded, such that let's say it was a multi-line answer and you made a small algebraic or perhaps arithmetic mistake in the first line, such that your final answer ends up being incorrect. Well, provided you've shown your method and have indeed explained your method, you can still qualify for a very large number of the mark allocation. So let's say it's a 10-mark question. Don't think you're either getting just 0 or 10. If you've made a small mistake, but you've explained your method, you are potentially going to get 8 or 9 marks for it. Would it be 8 or would it be 9? Or maybe perhaps 7? Well, this comes now to point 5, the importance of performing a reality check. Let's say 2 candidates, both of them made very minor mistakes, but one ended up with an impossible answer and another one ended up with a sensible answer. Wrong, but sensible. And the person who did not perform the reality check is going to be penalized more heavily than the person with a sensible answer, because it's all about the demonstration by you to the examiner of the extent of your understanding. And if you end up with an impossible answer and there's no indication on the script for you to indicate you recognize it's impossible, then you would be penalized more severely than someone who made a similar an error of a similar order of severity or magnitude, yet ends up with a sensible answer. And as with the qualitative papers, again, allocate your time accordingly. Easier to get some marks on all of the questions than all of the marks from some of the questions. So that's basically it. A very warm welcome to your EMFSS program of study. We wish you the best of luck, albeit luck is not the sole determinant of your exam performance, albeit I think it's fair to say for everyone, maybe 5 to 10% of your exam performance would be down to luck. The rest, though, would be determined by the amount of effort you've been putting in throughout the academic year. So, on behalf of the LSE EMFSS team, we wish you all the very best in the upcoming academic year, and of course in the years ahead. If you're doing, say, a standing a 3-year degree program with us, I hope very much to interact with you either in person as and when travel resumes, or at the very least through the VLE forum. Thank you for choosing your program of study with us. Remember, a degree is not just for 3 years. A degree is for life. It will be on your CV, on your resume forevermore. And we are delighted you've chosen your high quality, world-renowned, internationally recognized degree program to maximize your chances of success in your career ahead. So thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best in your studies.